Stellaris, Nemesis, and also patch version 3.0 have just landed for Paradox Interactive's grand space strategy game, Stellaris, and they change up the landscape of a lot of mechanics within the game. Whether you're returning from a hiatus or you've never really got a chance to break into Stellaris, the game has got a lot to offer on just the surface level, without even getting into all the many free patches that have changed the game. Then there's all the DLC to really worry about. So in this video today, I'm going to help break some of the mysticism behind starting your first or maybe your next campaign in Stellaris. This will be similar to my starting your first campaign video I did for Crusader Kings 3, linked in the upper right corner. The way I'm going to structure this video is by going over Empire creation first and some recommendations there. Then we'll go over the UI and walk you through some concepts linked to the UI elements, go over Planetary Management, discuss diplomacy, and then give you some recommendations on how to get your campaign rolling. And we'll close this video out discussing which DLC you should focus on, or at least the ones I think add the most value. I've provided chapters in both the timeline and description if you would like to quickly jump ahead or use them as reference points. I want to warn you though, this is not necessarily a walkthrough guide, more aimed at giving you the information you need to help understand aspects of the game that the tutorial does a poor job of connecting the dots on. Stellaris very much is a game of exploration and playing at your own speed, so please do not be afraid to fail and try new stuff. It's the easiest and best way to learn. Before we get started, you can pick up the entire Stellaris collection on sale from 50 to 75% off on my Nexus store right now up until April 19th. Nexus gives you a Steam key directly from the developer that you then just simply place into Steam. And it's a great way to support the channel. You can find a link to my store in the description and pinned comment. But let's get started on starting Stellaris in 2021. To start out, we're going to talk about Empire creation, and this can be a pretty sticky point of the game. If you already have mastered it, feel free to jump ahead, but it also can be dependent upon your DLC. That also is another thing that you can jump ahead to if you want to find out more about which DLC to purchase. Now, when it comes to your actual starting Empire, if this is your very first time playing, I find that the military dictatorship is a pretty good one because it's very straightforward. It's very similar to pretty much every other strategy game out there where you are a military dictatorship and you are trying to build up an army and then conquer the galaxy. Kind of think of it in that way. But there are a ton of other varieties across the entire spectrum of how you can play this game, and it gets very, very detailed. And again, like I said, a lot of this can be dependent upon which DLCs you have active. So I'm going to choose military dictatorship, and we're going to go through how to set up some of these things that you might not quite understand. You can just press select and jump into the game if you want, but we're going to press edit. And from here, we get to pretty much decide everything from appearance to the species name and how the adjectives work and the plurals work and everything, to your name lists of how all of your ships, planets, fleets, and leaders are named, everything. These first three options are entirely cosmetic, and I'm just going to go ahead and just skip over them because it's entirely up to you. Now, this is where things will start to get a little wonky for you. So you've got your traits, and you have got a total amount of traits and then a total amount of points. So I'm going to unselect everything here. So the total amount of traits that you can pick is 5, and your base point value to choose from, your pool, is 2. Now, how you manipulate this is by choosing some negative traits, right? Some penalties. And we're going to go over some that are a little bit better to start with because they're less of a hamstring and they're more of a minor inconvenience, especially at the start of the game. Then we're going to go over some of my preferred or recommended traits that are positive bonuses. So to start off here with our negative ones, just to give us a pool of points, we're going to talk about 3 big ones: unruly, deviance, and wasteful. So let's go look for unruly first. So this one is going to give us a penalty of 10% empire sprawl from populations. Now, if you've never played, that probably doesn't make any sense, but essentially it's talking about you have a limited amount of space that you can grow at one point, and that amount increases as you increase certain districts on planets and you increase other values in the game. And we'll talk about it more when we go into the UI. But it's a very easy one to mitigate, and also the penalty is just really not that intense. So we're going to choose unruly. Now, I'm only going to go with one negative trait, but I want to talk about the other ones real fast. So let's go ahead and find deviance, which I think I skipped. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. So governing ethics attraction is minus 15%. So this one, again, it has to do with the ethics that you're using to govern your entire empire. And it's very easy to mitigate with a lot of different either buildings or technologies. It's just such a small amount. And, you know, as this, you're only going to get 1 point for it, but it's a great way to get even one more point. So that is a great one. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about real quick is wasteful. This was the default one for the Commonwealth of Man. So population consumer goods upkeep is increased by 10%. Now, this one can really depend upon the empire that you're using, especially if you're using, say, a egalitarian empire with utopian abundance, which will make it so that consumer goods are not really that important anymore. But even so, 10% is not a massive amount to really hurt you. So feel free to use wasteful if you want to stick with the defaults of Commonwealth of Man and just kind of get going with the game. I would definitely steer clear, though, of fleeting. It is a very dangerous one because you're reducing the lifespan of your leader. Now, this says leader lifespan, but it's more encompassing than just that. This includes your scientists, your governors, your admirals, your generals. So this can be very damning because your leaders start from the age of 28 to 50. And they have around an average lifespan of 80. So that's 30 to 52 years, more or less. And you're basically taking 10 years off of that just to get another perk. So I find it to be not worth it. Same thing with strong and resilient. They're just not that good. Defense army damage plus 50%. And then strong is the other one, wherever the hell that is. It's a whole chain. It's just not worth it at 20% army damage and worker pop resource output 2.5%. You can get a lot of different bonuses and resource output from technologies, and the actual damage of your army is based upon the army type and its number. So it's really not worth it to invest in this. So those I would all steer clear of. But now let's talk about the other ones that I would choose, and that's 3: industrious, intelligent, and adaptive. So I'm just going to click all of them onto here. I don't think I can actually do it, but yeah, okay. They're all in one area. So adaptive increases our habitability of our planets, and we'll talk about that when we get to the. Actually, it's the next area, so we'll talk about that next. But then you've got industrious, which will increase the mineral from your jobs by 15%. I can't tell you how often minerals have been a huge gating force for me. So having minerals increased by 15% is a very nice bonus. Then lastly, intelligent is also very strong because you're increasing your research in all 3 of your research fields of engineering, physics, and society. And why that's important is because in the early portions of the game, if you don't tech up fast enough, then you'll find that the AI is just so much stronger than you that they can completely smash out your armies or just completely roll over you. So intelligent is a very strong one, and adaptive, I think, is a must take. But I think it's really just up to you. Do you want intelligent and adaptive or industrious and adaptive? And again, feel free to choose something that's not what I've recommended because you want a different style of gameplay. Role play the character or the empire that you want the most. I cannot emphasize that enough. While these traits are strong, they will not break the game for you if you do not choose them. Or if you're particularly trying to choose a challenging campaign, then go with that route. So let's go ahead and just go with we'll go with intelligent. We'll click next. So remember, adaptive gave us a habitability of 10%. That is important because we're now going to talk about that portion of the game. Now, your homeworld is one of 9 options here. You've got the climates that are dry, wet, and frozen. And they're all broken then into these these 3 spheres, right? So you get ocean world, continental world, and a tropical world. And you've got an Arctic world, an alpine world, and a tundra world. Unfrozen, and then dry, you've got desert, arid, and savanna. Now, why this is important is, let's just choose continental world here. This is our wet climate. So we have a base habitability for continental planets of 80%. That means when we look at ocean and tropical, we have a base habitability of 60% because that is not the same as our home world, but it's similar enough. It's in the same climate. If you want to choose anything in the dry or the frozen climate planets on the map, you're going to be looking at a 20% habitability. So it's very hard to choose any of these other planets. So basically you're saying 1/3 of the planets are easier to colonize than the other 2/3. So it's not a huge thing, because essentially all 9 of the planets spawn in roughly, it's supposed to be an equal percentage across the entire map, but the way the RNG always works is you just get no hospitable planets. But don't worry about that. That's just griping. So what I will say though is, because we have chosen, again, adaptive, that increases by 10%. So if we're looking at our home world, which we would have a natural 100% at, any other continental world we find, we would have 80% at base, plus adaptive brings us to 90%. And any tropical or ocean world brings us from a base 60 to 70, and then dry or frozen brings us from a base 20 to 30. So it makes these other planets, even the harder to colonize ones, just a little bit easier. Then here in the starting solar system, you can choose a bunch of different selections. The majority of these are all aesthetic for the most part. You can even choose to live in the Sol system, making it so this is Earth, which is kind of cool. You can here, we'll even type in Earth, star system, Sol. So go ahead and press next here. City appearances, again, entirely cosmetic. And now origin can be kind of spicy. You can choose pretty hard ones. You can go with something like Doomsday or Life Seeded. So let's look at Life Seeded or Doomsday, which is down here at the very bottom. These are very hard origins, and I would not recommend them. Life Seeded seems like it's pretty cool because you start off with a Gaia world, which is a really strong planet. But it makes so your home world is a Gaia world, and it's a rare planet. So remember we talked about with the habitability of those other planets, it's going to make everything else, I think it's like 60% at base. So, or 60 or 20% at base. So you have to find another Gaia world. It's a lot harder to deal with Life Seeded if you're not familiar with the game. Now, if it's your first time going through, here are some ones that I recommend here. Now, Shattered Ring is really good because it gives you a ring world, and ring worlds have a ton of stuff that you can kind of unearth, and it makes for a very fun playthrough. Scion starts as a vassal of a fallen empire, so you basically have a super strong empire above you, insulating you from much damage. So this is kind of an easy way to learn the game without having to worry about other empires eating you up. Those two are really good ones. Now another one here, where is it? Lost Colony, is an advanced empire of this species is spawned somewhere in the galaxy. This is just kind of a really interesting one that you can go with because you'll find a clone of you somewhere else out there that you can try to ally with or take over. And if you take them over, all their planets are going to somewhat have a similar population to yours, assuming they haven't interbred with a bunch of aliens. Now, the other one that used to be quite strong, but has now recently been limited, is Prosperous Unification. Start the game with an additional 4 population and with an additional 2 districts. This bonus disappears though after 10 years from what I've heard with patch 3.0. But I would choose this one, Prosperous Unification, or Lost Colony if you just want a very vanilla and easy start to the game. If you want to play something more akin to Warhammer 40,000, Remnants gives you a relic world to start off with, and you were once this big galaxy-spanning super empire that has now been relegated to a single planet. So there are a lot of really cool ways to start the game, and everyone has a different approach to it, but if you just are starting for the first time, go Prosperous Unification or even Lost Colony. If you want a really strong early start, Shattered Ring is another really good one, and Scion will give you a big fallen empire to be your basically your big daddy that you can live off of. On the Shoulder of Giants is also kind of an interesting one as well, but I don't know much about it to recommend it 100%. So let's just go ahead and go with Prosperous Unification. Now, ethics, authority, and civics are some pretty interesting ones. Essentially, the civics that you can choose are based upon your ethics and your authority. And your authority is essentially how your government is run. Your ethics are the underlying themes or underlying strictures of your government. Now, to look at this easily, we're going to unclick everything here. Each one of these is a line, right? You have Gestalt consciousness in the very center, but militarist has an antithesis, and that would be a pacifist, right? You have authoritarianism, which is going to be offset by egalitarian. You've got xenophile, which is offset by xenophobe. And then obviously spiritualist with materialist. So anything you choose in these locations, it's then going to choose or open up certain civics. So let's take, for example, let's go with, what's one I've looked at? Imperial cult. So the requirements for imperial cult is some degree of authoritarian. So let's go ahead and choose one of those. Is some degree of spiritualist. Okay. Some degree obviously being either fanatic or spiritualist, and we'll go into those in just a second. And then lastly, has imperial authority. That'd be this one right here. So that would unlock then, it shoots up to the top if you can choose it, imperial cult. And we'll just choose, we'll get rid of nationalistic zeal. So that's how I would have imperial cult as a civic option. You have to make sure you've got the ethic and the authority. Now, when you're choosing your ethics and authorities, let's take a look at some of them here. You've got modifiers, right? So it increases your unity and it reduces your edict cost for spiritualist. Versus militarist, reduces claim influence cost and increases ship fire rate. Same thing with xenophobe has got something different here too. Star-based influence cost minus 20% and pop growth speed is increased. Now, these are the empire modifiers I'm reading off to you. There are certain things that bar each ethic from allowing you to do certain things. So jumping back here to xenophobe, they can purge aliens, they can enslave aliens, but they cannot give aliens full citizenship. They cannot allow aliens full military service, cannot use refugees welcome species policy. So as you're selecting these ethics, you have to see what it's going to bar off for you. I think spiritualist cannot use full AI rights. So if you want to have a gigantic a robot-led society, spiritualist is just not going to be the one for you. Versus materialist allows academic privilege, cannot use AI outlawed policy, meaning that they need AI as a part of their government at one point. Well, not necessarily need it, but they can't outlaw it, which some factions might say, hey, I want you to outlaw this. So do keep those things in mind. Now, just like with traits, you are limited to 3 total ethics points. The outside ones give you 2, the inside ones cost 1. I'm sorry, the outside ones cost 2, the inside ones cost 1, and this bad boy costs all 3. Now, I would definitely not recommend Gestalt consciousness, and I think the game default has you to this for Commonwealth of Man. We'll just set this to these two so we can do imperial cult. In fact, I would actually, xenophobe is nice, but I'm going to go militarist because xenophobe can make it very hard if you're playing through the game and you don't want to deal with getting into a war or having to deal with a faction that wants to bring you into war because there's a Xenos you're talking to. Xenophobe is going to push you in that direction with some factions. So that's why I would just say, hey, just go with these 3. Militarist, spiritualist, and authoritarian, and that's only because I chose imperial cult for this. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to do military, go with pacifist. If you want to be a xenophile, you can. There's none of these are really the wrong way to play, is what I'm trying to say. And the same thing with authority, just make sure it matches up with the civics you have in mind. And then from there, honestly, the civics are just going to really depend upon these 2. So once you selected these 2, you'll have all the ones that you can select towards the top of this list. So if I go to the top here, you can see got all the check marks. And as I start to scroll down, these check marks will disappear and I'll start to get little X's. See, that's our first one. Boom. So we can't do this one, but we can do this one. So I know that doesn't sound very helpful. Like, well, yeah, Guy, what does that mean? Which ones do I choose? Choose the ones that fit the ethics and the authority you have in mind first, and then go with the civics. I'm going to go ahead and press next on that one. Choose a voice.
These alien savages must
this is the Imperium of Man easily with xenophobe right there.
Protocols?
We'll go ahead and press next. Name and adjective again are custom. Flag is whatever you want. And then the ship's appearance is whatever you want and whatever DLCs you have that will allow you to do them. Like the new Imperial ships. I don't have the Necroid ship here. And then the ruler, you're setting their title and their heir title. Remember though, set up for both male and female in case you have a male or female character that steps up, because they will take these title names. But we're just going to keep everything as is, press next, and that is all set. We are done with creating our empire. All that's left is just to press done and jump into the game. Before we jump into the game, it's important to take a quick look at the game details portion. Now, some of this might depend upon your actual machine. Like if you have a strong enough machine, can you push to a higher galaxy size? Go ahead and do it. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. You can go ahead and copy pretty much everything from this screen you see before you. I've shut off advanced AI starts. I've put AI empires at 10. I've put the galaxy shape to spiral, and I've kept it at medium if this is, again, one of your first time playing or you're trying to get your feet wet again. Pretty much everything, though, is default. Victory year was moved up to 2600 because, again, after this point, the game ends. Then your mid-game and end-game start points are at 2300 and 2400. These are when certain points in the game will trip off, and stuff like the Fallen Empires will quote-unquote activate, stuff like that, that you'll kind of learn to come into as you play more into the game. In my opinion, just doing the default medium setting is really not going to hurt you. But one thing I do want to look at here is the difficulty. So on the bottom end, difficulty starts at cadet. You can look at this as very easy, ensign up to easy, captain at normal, hard, very hard, impossible. And I'm just throwing out blanket statements here, but pretty much captain is your normal, is the standard difficulty of the game. I think by default it puts you on ensign. So I'd say ensign or captain is a really good place to start off for your first campaign, or at least reacquainting yourself. And then lastly, what I would do is shut off xenocompatibility. And this would make it so that your races, I guess for the most part, from what I understand, will stay as the race that you choose. They won't intermingle and intermarry and create like crossbreeds or stuff of the sort. But this is just kind of a quick crash on the game details. You don't need to spend a ton of time on this. I would just pretty much go to default and then get going so you can get your feet wet in the game. And here we are on the campaign map. So to start off, we're just going to talk about the UI. I'm going to talk about the elements up here. We're going to talk about these over here on the left. We'll talk about some other things over here and down here and so on and so forth. But it's pretty much just to get you acquainted and break down some of the barrier of entry with them and kind of help you understand them. So let's go across the top. So to start off here, we have energy credits. And by hovering over all of these, it's going to give you a pretty good breakout of what's produced, what's consumed, and how to increase that resource. Now, energy credits are really important. Obviously, it's essentially, think of it as your currency, your gold currency. Even says here, energy credits is an energy-backed currency accepted by all spacefaring races. So this is something that you do want to keep an eye on, because especially in the beginning portions of the game, it's what's going to enable you to recruit more science officers that allow you to have more science ships so you can further expand both your borders and discover other races across the galaxy. Moving over, we have minerals, which is going to be another big bottleneck of yours. You again have your produced and your consumed and so on and so forth. Minerals is a collective term for the basic resources we need to construct ships, stations, and planetary buildings. And these are what you'll pretty much be using mining stations for when you create outposts from star to star. A very important resource. Food is probably, of all the resources, the least important and maybe one of the easiest ones to manipulate. And we're going to go through some beginning game strategies after everything to show you how you can really capitalize on your food and energy in the very beginning portions of the game. Keep in mind, we're paused here and we're going to stay paused almost for the entirety of this video, just as a heads up. Moving on here, we have our consumer goods. There's an advanced resource that represents the various gadgets, luxuries, and goods necessary to give your populace a good life and perform intellectual jobs such as research. So consumable goods or consumer goods are very important because this is what's going to allow your research rate to continue to grow. As you build more research stations across the galaxy, an example will be this one right here. This research station requires researchers to obviously research your research. And these science jobs, which we'll jump into at the planetary level, I'll break out more, they will use consumer goods as part of their upkeep. But we'll get into that more as we talk about other portions of planetary management. Moving into alloys, we have got, this is another huge portion. You'll be using this to create your starships, star bases. This is a huge resource, and you'll start to use it more and more as you expand your empire. But really the front ones that you're going to use the most are these two. Then influence is the trickiest resource of them all because it's the hardest one to gain, and it will really be your biggest bottleneck when it comes to expanding. Your starbase production requires influence and alloys. Alloy, you can see, is increasing at plus 12 versus influence is only plus 3. And depending upon certain diplomatic actions, or maybe the level of support with some factions in your empire, you'll start to lose influence pretty significantly, so you have to be wary of it. Next up, we have unity. Now, unity is used to unlock new traditions. And what you do with unity, I'm going to left click, it brings up these trees. And these trees are important because you can kind of think of them as almost like talent trees if you're thinking of a conventional MMORPG. You'll specialize in a specific tradition, and then you'll go through all of the individual, additional traditions within these. And then once you do that, you can unlock an ascension perk. Slot is not available. Finish a tradition group by adopting all of its traditions or research the ascension theory technology to unlock an ascension perk. And these ascension perks are basically like super talents. You kind of think of it from a World of Warcraft standpoint, where back in the day, okay, you get X amount of talent points and then you can get an active ability. This isn't necessarily an active ability, but it is a way to kind of quote unquote break a rule or break the game in a certain way, or give you a very large boon. These ascension perks are huge. The ascension perks can essentially change the way your empire works. You've got a whole bunch of different ones that are accessible to you, and I don't want to spoil them because some are very, very cool. But you can say, get psiotic, and you get a whole entire race of space marines, or I guess a better way to put it might be like librarians from Warhammer 40,000. So there's a bunch of really cool ascension perks that really color your playthrough, and they will completely take your empire on a different route depending on the ascension perk and where it's gotten from. Now, closing this menu, we're going to look at research. Now, this is the cumulative research we've got here across all of our 3 research branches: physics, society, and engineering. I think if I click this, it'll show me each one. There we go, 21, 21, and 24. And I can see that I'm getting where I'm getting these from: base, the stations, the jobs, so on and so forth. Again, each one. The nice thing about this game is that if you can't find where something is coming from, there is a menu hidden somewhere that will give you a very detailed breakout of it. So you kind of just have to scrub around until you find it. You've got some particularly rare resources that will only spawn on specific planets or specific star systems. I almost said star bases. Star systems that you'll gather throughout your playthrough, and these are again dependent upon which DLCs you have active. Then you have Empire Sprawl. So Empire Sprawl is pretty unique here. So essentially the way that this works is that if I press M, you can see that we have just a small amount of Empire Sprawl. We're just one single location here, and that is kind of 31 out of our total 50. So Empire Sprawl is lower than our administrative capacity, which is 50. And how this works is it's dependent upon systems, colonies, and districts. All of these things will increase your Empire Sprawl. You can see right there, we're getting 13 from our population, 5 from our colony, 1 from a system, and then 11, 1 per district. So as your sprawl increases, you pretty much, it's kind of think of it as a soft cap on your expansion. If you go over it, it's not that big of a deal in the initial stages. Going to 55 of 50 is not going to kill you, but going to 100 of 50 will really start to hamstring you, because every point over the cap, you will have an increase to your tech cost, to your tradition costs, and to certain campaign costs. As you can see here at the bottom, it says will increase the cost of technologies, traditions, leaders, edicts, and campaigns. So you want to keep this well managed. If you push too far by, say, making, let's say I colonized all of these worlds. I'm sorry, not colonized. We made an outpost on each one of these stars. And let's say one of these stars had a world, and we colonize that world, and we just fill it with districts. Well, our sprawl is going to increase substantially, even though we don't have a huge empire. So don't think of this as a representation of the size, the size on the map of your empire. Think of it as what your empire is currently utilizing. Even if you go and you establish outposts on all of these stars over here, there's a good chance your empire sprawl won't get out of control. Because like I said, one empire sprawl per district on a planet. We click here, you can see the total. Each one of these colored in blocks is a district that we own. So that is contributing to that empire sprawl with a total of 11 districts. So it can get out of control if you've got 2 planets that have a lot of districts. You've spent a lot of time on another colony. So each one of these things is going to really contribute against this. So try to be wary of it, but don't worry if you tip over just a little bit. Envoys are individuals that are going to help you out when it comes to establishing first contact, doing any kind of diplomacy in which they will be able to increase relations, decrease relations, or they can be used for espionage. You won't be using them in the very initial portions of the game in the first like 20-30 minutes, but once you encounter a race, you will. We'll have a whole section on that. Then we have our total empire population, our total starbase capacity. If you push above starbase capacity, remember an outpost is not a starbase. And an outpost would be when I construct one on a surveyed system. So you don't have to worry about going over this number unless you're making star bases. And we'll go over when is a good time to do that. And you've got your naval capacity. So naval capacity will increase, and so will all of these things that have caps. They all can be increased with technologies, with districts, with shipyards, or individual what are these things called? Traditions. There's plenty of ways to increase them. So don't worry about approaching those caps. You'll be able to go over them. Now on the left side over here, we have a lot of different menus. And to be totally honest, this is probably one of the hardest parts of the game. For me, when I was getting into it, I was like, oh, this is so intimidating. So what I'm going to tell you is all of these are pertinent, but they will not be pertinent in the first couple hours of your gameplay. Contacts will start to populate with all the people you find throughout the empire. They'll be easily found within this menu. You can jump into either diplomacy or into espionage. Very easy, very straightforward. Pressing F2, we've got the situation log. Think of this as your quest log if you're thinking from a conventional RPG standpoint. This will start to fill up with anomalies, other little side quests, and that kind of fill your situation log. That'll show you where they are on the map. Even first contact will be a part of the situation log. Now, in addition to that, anomalies will go in here in specific. Sorry, situation log will have your geographical digs, not anomalies. So anomalies will go into here. Then you have your victory tab. And again, don't worry about this. You'll never really use it. Jump into market here. You have the ability to buy and sell your resources, as you could expect. And you can also do monthly trading if you so wish, if you get to that level. Planets and sectors, ignore it. You don't really want to do any kind of auto sector management until you get to the point where you even have another sector to auto manage. So by that time, you'll get your feet wet in that direction and it won't be as scary, but ignore this entire menu for the time being. Expansion planner is a way to say, if I'm looking at my map and I've discovered 5 planets, they'll be on here and I can go through here to just quickly expand into them. So you have your habitable planets is surveyed, is colonizable. So you can click these things to quickly filter stuff out, but for the most part, you'll know where those planets are. Like this one, for example, it's here. I've clicked off is surveyed. We can see these 2 planets since they are within our survey range, our sensor range. And so I can immediately jump to them if I so wish once I survey those locations, and I can do the colonization and everything and manage it all from here. Not super important, to be totally honest. Policies is a big one, and this one will be very dynamic. It's going to change as your empire changes, as you grow. And the big part of this is going to look at stuff like diplomatic stance, expansionist. You can change these off to isolationists, to cooperative, or to belligerent. And with each one of these, there's going to come some boons and some penalties. Isolationist is a good example. So with this, your administrative capacity is increased by 15%, That's your empire sprawl. So administrative capacity is the number on the right, 50, where this number on the left is your empire sprawl. So 31 sprawl versus 50 capacity. Where is this? Monthly unity is going to increase. So the thing that increases your experience towards those quote unquote talent points. And then diplomatic weight is decreased and diplomatic influence cost is increased. You're an isolationist. You don't want to talk to people. You just want to be left alone. Governing ethics attraction plus 25%, then border friction plus 200%. Border friction is when your border meets up with another empire, and it will cause either stressful or not stressful friction depending upon what your diplomatic stances are. Certain ones are barred to you, because you can see here we do not have a merchant guild civic. We do not have the supremacy traditions finished, so certain ones of these you can't even use. But war philosophy, unrestricted versus liberation wars, orbital bombardments. So I would just kind of take a look through all of these. A lot of them, let me do this. I think this is probably a better way to look at this. So these are the ones that you'll probably have the most to deal with in the early portions of the game. I think I'd say these are the three big ones. War philosophy, you could argue, is in there too, but diplomatic stance, you'll want to choose one of these. This always will coincide. All of these policies will coincide with how you made your empire to start. It's like a default stance for them all. So if you decide, well, you know what, let's just first contact, we'll always go cautious. That way, whenever we encounter another race, we're not going to just jump immediately into a conflict. We'll be cautious about it. We'll go that route. So you'll take care of that. Our diplomatic stance, we'll just stay expansionist. We want to grow. We want to get bigger. We'll stay with that. Now, trade policy is another big one. So the way trade works, this might be better off suited in its own section, but we'll just kind of do it together. If I click, we'll jump into our star system. We'll click on our star base here, and we're going to click trade routes. So these are all the systems, or the systems around us, and we can see our collection range is 1. So that means anything that is 1 jump from Deneb, these 3 locations right here, we will get trade from them. So rightfully, when we go back to policies, F6, we've got ways to deal with this trade. Each trade value collected earns us 1 credit. Consumer benefits gives us 0.5 credits and 0.25 consumer goods, or marketplace of ideas. Trade value earns us 0.5 credits and 0.25 unity. Personally, I would go with marketplace of ideas. This will give you more unity, so you can jump through those traditions faster, and you're going to really need those in the early portions of the game to push through the game quickly. Now, moving into edicts, you'll get basically kind of think of these as stances or little things that you can do to quickly boost specific roles you want to give the empire. Right now, we've got fortify the border. So this will last until canceled. Starbase upgrade speed plus 50%, starbase capacity plus 2, empire sprawl from system plus 10%. And it will cost you influence. Remember, we don't want to spend influence all willy-nilly, and I would honestly just not do this edict. You would focus on a different one, probably one called Map the Stars, which we'll talk about when we go over what to do in the beginning portions of the game. Society management is again going to bring you into your traditions panel. You can click it here, or just press F8, either one. And this is where we'll go through our individual traditions. Now, the 2 I recommend, and we'll go over this again more so later, would be expansion and then discovery. And I would do just the reach for the stars portion of expansion and then go into discovery, because discovery has a huge amount of benefits, especially in these first ones. And we'll go over that in a later section. Relics allows you to sell or do stuff with the minor relics that you will get from surveying planets, from doing individual researches or anomalies that pop up. Not as huge in the very beginning. Spend most of your time surveying rather than actually doing any of the anomalies that pop up. If you get, hey, an anomaly detected, just say leave it be. Unless it is a particularly easy one that's going to take you near no time to do, just leave it and do them all once you've expanded and solidified your borders. Crisis, this is only going to be active way later in the game, so don't worry about it. Ship Designer, where you're going to build your ships. You will need to use this, and I'm going to cover this in the later section where we talk about what to do with the initial portions of the game, because I think this is going to be more pertinent there. Fleet Manager will become more valuable as you get more fleets. In the beginning portion, you can really ignore it. You can manage your entire fleet from this button right here and never even go to the Fleet Manager. But as you get more fleets, it's going to be far easier to manage them from this portion. But again, you're hard pressed to get multiple fleets in the first handful of hours of your gameplay. Technology is super important here. So the big thing here with technology is every single scientist has got a perk. You can see this one has expertise in computing. This one has Spark of Genius, which is a very good, strong perk. Another one here has got Adaptable. Leader experience gains 25%. This one can be good, but typically this is one you'd want to give to someone in a science ship, not someone researching your technologies. So let's replace this one real quick. We got Tabby Cat here, Tabitha McCall, and she is our adaptable one. And then we also have Meticulous, anomaly discovery chance plus 10%. So we actually don't have a lot of amazing people to research. This one is. Spark of Genius is a really good one because it increases research speed by 10%. Now, if we go back to this menu here, actually, technology, what is really kind of important with this is taking a look at the little icons. Now, when we look at this one with expertise computing, this obviously increases the research speed of computing. And I'm going to click select research, and it'll prop up 3 different random researches. And as you go down different traditions, you'll get access to more, so on and so forth. But this specialization will increase the chance of those specializations appearing as a research for physics, society, or engineering, whatever it is. And you typically always want to focus at the beginning of the game on those 20% bonuses. This is going to be a huge increase to your research speed. So we're going to select this one. And here for society. Again, I would go Unity if possible. Planetary Unification is a very strong one. And so is the 20% research one. Another really strong one would be the genome mapping with population growth speed. And then lastly here with engineering, we've got a bunch of different ones. Now, this one's probably the best to go without the gate, but ideally you'd want to put someone with Voidcraft in this location. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but if I go to leaders and press recruit, well, we unfortunately did not get a leader here with Voidcraft. A scientist, but that's okay. You don't need one. It's just like I said earlier, it increases the chance of Voidcraft technologies appearing in this menu. And at any point you can change these researches by just pressing this button and just swapping onto a new one. Now you can see that this says 0 out of 2,000. If you swap out, that progress retains. So if you decide, you know what, this just isn't a priority, we're 500 into it, well, we can switch to afterburners without a problem. But again, you want to try and find someone with Voidcraft, which looks like a single little rocket ship. And that one will actually be better at discovering some of the things like megastructures and stuff down the line that are way, way, way important to you. And you'll also need these technologies to discover new ships like destroyers and cruisers and all the things that progress up from corvettes. And it really depends too, of course, on what type of empire you're going with, but you'll constantly be cycling these researches in, or these technologies into place. But focus on the 20% ones out the gate if you can. They're going to be your big, big, big boons. Jumping into factions. Now, I've been told a number of things here. You don't ever really need to worry about this. You'll get your first faction at around 11 years into your gameplay, and you can appease them. They're really for roleplay purposes from what I've been told, and they really aren't going to really make or break your game, especially in the beginning. You can suppress them, costing you influence. I do not recommend that, and you can promote them, costing you influence. Again, I don't recommend that either. Just kind of let them go until you understand the game better, and then fall back on what their issues are. When we jump forward, I can explain them a little bit better because we'll have some to look at. Claims, not important. right now, because right now you're going to be expanding. Claims are essentially the same thing as they were for Crusader Kings 3. You create a claim to get a cashless belly to go to war with an empire. You can say, hey, you know, our borders butt up against each other. I'm going to make a claim on the system within your border, and that's the one I'm going to attack, and that's how I'm going to do things. So we're going to go to species now next, and these are all the species in your empire. Right now, it's just humans. You're not going to ever use it in the beginning portions of the game, so don't worry about it. Then lastly, leaders. Now, leaders are your governors, your scientists, your admirals, and your generals. We went over just a little bit on how to recruit them, but when we jump into what to do in the beginning portions, I'm going to show you a quick little quote-unquote hack to get you another early scientist so you can focus on having more science ships out early. But that covers the base of the UI. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is over here. And right now, this is very minimal, right? I mean, just the sectors, everything, your shipyards, your military fleets. It seems very easy, but this will start to grow very big as you get more ships, more fleets, more shipyards, especially more outposts on there, more colonies. Your factions will be displayed here. It will start to get a little out of control. So you can just kind of collapse these things as you see fit. And it's a really nice way to kind of manage what you do and don't need. Like maybe, hey, you're not in the middle of a war. Why have your military fleets open? Close it. Or hey, you know, you've given all of your tasks to all of your ships. Go ahead and close that too. So those things are going to be very important to just kind of manage everything at a glance, but I just wanted to give you a quick look at that. And you have a number of filters that you can apply to the map if you need a quick look at things, but they will help you out in saying, okay, here's the neighboring map mode, AI attitude, like do they like you, do they not like you, or I'm sorry, are they hostile towards you, whatever, the opinion map mode, the intel map mode, diplomatic map mode, all these things that you're not really going to worry about too much in the beginning. In fact, I think the first 30 hours of the game, I didn't even touch these in the lower right corner. But one button that is super huge is the Alt button. If I hold it down, see I hold it down and it causes that right here, I can see that on this system, these white numbers mean that I don't have anything there producing from them. So if I click on my construction ship, then right click, I see I have the ability now to build research stations and mining stations here, because these two will require mining stations and that one requires a research station. So when you start to expand and you move across the map, you will find the Alt button invaluable because you'll have sent multiple construction ships out to make multiple outposts across the map for you. And by holding down Alt, you can quickly see, okay, well, there's a lot of green numbers here. I know I've created those respective stations there, either mining or research. I know I need another one here or there, depending on whatever it is. There's a white text. I got to go fix that. But that is the quick little crash course here on the UI. You've got some quick navigation buttons here too, if you want to jump into those, but they're pretty much, I'd say, easier to go through over here. But that concludes just talking very quickly about the UI for Stellaris. Now we switched gears here to talk about diplomacy. I've loaded into one of my saves, and you can see I've gotten quite a bit of land here. And I'm also over my Empire Sprawl and my star bases, and my energy credits are hurting. So just trying stuff out. But like I was talking about with that Alt button earlier, you can see if I hold it down, I can see everything across the whole map. And like I was saying too with the outliner, it gets pretty big. It gets pretty out of control. And I'm not even very far into this game. But let's get back on track here with diplomacy. So I'm going to go to contacts. And you can see we have a lot of diplomatic relations with a lot of different races across the map. I'm just going to scroll out and you can see, you know, down here, over here, one's over there, and then the United Nations of Earth are right here. So let's bring up the United Nations of Earth first. You can click this icon, or you can click diplomacy here. And this brings this up. And you have some other options here. You can press this button to choose a different empire if you want to just quickly navigate without having to go back to a bunch of different menus. But taking a look here, we can take a look at the big thing here, which is the AI's attitude towards us. Right now, it's friendly. And if I hover over this, depending on your standing with them, you might not be able to see their opinion of us and our opinion of them. If you have particularly bad standing, you won't be able to see these things. But this is, of course, the big one here, right? So right now, this bar shows us how far we are towards the next level of opinion, and that is measured by this right here. So that's the total relation. So our positive relations are at 426. And if you see here the relation levels at the bottom, the next one is excellent relations at 750. Since we're at 426, we're about at this point in that bar, so we haven't quite hit excellent relations. Conversely, just to kind of show you a juxtaposition here very quickly, we'll switch over to these guys. That bar is full, right? And you're like, oh, maybe these guys like me. No, it's just showing that when I hover over this, we are right at the beginning of tense relations. We're not quite at neutral. Neutral is at negative 300. Since we're at negative 367, we're still in the tense relations portion. So once we push to negative 299, it becomes neutral relations. So if this bar is confusing, that is why. Moving back here to Earth, we can see a number of other things. We can see their diplomatic stance. They're cooperative. They do want to talk with us. And we can see their overall relative power to us. Equivalent in our fleet power. Superior. They are superior in their technology over us. And we have equivalent economic power. And then in this left portion, we get some other things like, okay, here is their origin, their prosperous unification. Here is their race, and there's the breakout of their empire sprawl, if we can see it yet, their empire colonies, their empire population, and then lastly, their diplomatic weight. Now, these things are increased by their fleet power, their population, their economy, their technology, everything. And cooperative also adds to this, as you can see here. And then we also get what their ethics are and their civics are right here, and their type of government. So their names, United Nations of Earth, representative democracy with and their federation builders. So a nice quick breakout. Now, if I move over to this right portion, I can also see a bunch of other information, right? We can see rivaling an unidentified empire and rivaled by an unidentified empire. And those rivals typically help with military dictatorships. You establish a rivalry. There's a chance you're probably going to go to war, but it'll help out with some of your factions who will say, oops, wrong button there. Factions, they'll say something like, oh, we want you to be local rivalry. Positioning ourselves as the rival of at least one empire will please the Military Officers Association, which is the primary faction that I want to appease for whatever reason. And these issues for these guys are going to pretty much dictate how your diplomacy works. Aggressive diplomacy. Failing to allow for offensive warfare will displease the Military Officers Association. So if you're trying to please specific factions within your empire, it's going to change how your diplomatic stance is with the empire that you encounter. Are you going to be aggressive? You're going to jump to war? You're going to just jam your fist down their throat? I don't know why that's what I said, but that's what I'm sticking with. Or are you going to try to, I think one of these is, I actually think none of these on this playthrough are like that. But some of them say like, they want to move towards a more peaceful ends, and you would appease that if that's the kind of federation, or I'm sorry, the faction you want to support within your empire. So moving back here to United Nations of Earth, we have got commercial pact with us. It shows pretty much all the agreements and wars and pacts and everything through here. You can just hover over to find out what they are. And for the most part, you won't be really embroiled too much with them in the early game as far as having them greatly affect you. It's pretty much going to be, are you at war with them or are you not? And do you have a closed border with them and do you not? Closing borders is not as hostile as it sounds, because if I have closed borders, they can't go through my lands to make another station or connect another part of their empire or envelop me, whatever they want to do. So closing borders is oftentimes quite a good thing unless you want to have really strong diplomatic relations with that empire. Like for example, United Nations of Earth, I have an open border with them. Then you get a whole bunch of decisions, as it were. You can improve or harm relations. By doing so, you click this button and you would assign a envoy to do this for you. Then you've got make a claim. We talked about this, but this would be, we'll scroll down to take a look. This is my border. This is theirs. You can click this and there we go. It's going to cost me 25 to do this, and I have a claimed system You can add a couple more into here. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to claim all these. Well, we can only do the ones that are close to me. I'm going to do that. And oops, sorry. And those are the ones I'm going to make a claim on, and that's going to be part of my Casus Belli to go to war. That's what the claims are. Offer a trade deal, in which case you two start trading. Break defensive pacts, commercial pacts, and the commercial pacts, defensive pacts, all these things allow for like a research agreement. So we are currently able to learn those additional resources from our physics, our society, and our engineering research from this research agreement. And we share that back with them. The commercial pack gives us pretty much credits, and they get credits from us. Defensive pact is exactly what it sounds like. You'll also see something that says ensure independence. That's like a one-sided defensive pact, in which case if they say, hey, we ensure your independence, then they will come to your aid if you're attacked. If you ensure their dependence, where is it? Actually, I think if you have a defensive pact, you can't. But independence will pretty much ensure a one-way defensive pact. Whoever insures it is the one that will defend the one that they're insuring, pretty much. Migration treaty is exactly what it sounds like. Close the borders, open the borders, demand vassalization, in which case they become a vassal state of yours. Demand tribute from them, ask to be their vassal, offer tribute to them. You can create an embassy in their lands, which is going to help you with espionage. We'll go into a little bit. Build a spy network, which that will also help. Declare war, declare a rivalry, which is not a war. Keep in mind, not a war. And then form a federation. And that's a pretty cool one that you won't get until quite later in your timeline, because you need the Federation diplomacy tradition unlocked. Then you can just insult them if you really want to add insult to injury. So I will actually do espionage as its own section, but let's jump now over to espionage. Now, espionage is the new system that was added in with Stellaris Nemesis, and depending on how you go about this, you have access to a ton of operations. But let's start from the top over here. So we have got our infiltration level, and this will increase over time as long as we have an envoy positioned to set up a spy network. They will slowly increase this over time, and we will start to get more and more information out of the target empire. And that will translate over here into intel. Intel is changing at a rate of minus 0.08 per month to a minimum of 0. And right now we're getting a medium on the government intel, the diplomacy intel, economy, and technology, but minimal or low on military. And these will give us stuff like the relative fleet power, location of star bases, everything like that. And if you hover over this, diplomatic pacts may grant additional intel on the other party, regardless of the current intel level. So this is telling us here that as we set up embassies and research and defensive and migration and commercial pacts, it gives us more and more information on their relative portions of their society. So it's actually a very, very huge boon to set up a spy network in places you maybe aren't ready to attack just yet, but you want to get more information on, or maybe they're just out of reach and you want to really just kind of hone in on everything. And then you have operations. This is obviously the lion's share of what this all does. So the operations is divided into two portions here. The difficulty, which is obviously hell for all of these. As you can see, hell, that's six pluses. And then the infiltration level. So you have to have this infiltration level to do these operations. And we can do all the way down to sabotage starbase. We can't arm privateers, unfortunately. And then you've got your difficulty, which is based off of your relative encryption. So right now ours is routine, which is unfortunate because that just means it sucks. And the only way to increase this that I've been able to discover is by technology. So in the beginning portions of the game, you probably won't have a ton of luck doing any of these operations, but I'm going to quickly go over them just for the sake of talking about them real quick. You can gather info, you can spark diplomatic incident, can cause diplomatic embarrassment involving an envoy of the United Nations, prepare a sleeper cell, and this is nice because if I move this envoy off of here, I will start to lose infiltration level and intel. The sleeper cell will prevent that decay, and it's very nice in case I have to use one of my two envoys on something else. I won't lose any infiltration level. Acquire asset is basically an individual who will help you in all of these endeavors. It'll help reduce the difficulty level. Your extort favors, where you get a favor from the parent faction. Smear campaign, to lower relations between the United Nations of Earth and another empire, so you can target two empires to try to get them to go into a proxy war, essentially. Steal technology from them, sabotage starbases, and then arm privateers, which will randomly spawn somewhere in their space to attack. So you have a lot of really cool benefits that you can use here, and it is nice to be able to use espionage to kind of change the sway or the balance of power in the galaxy without having to directly go into conflict. But I wanted to quickly show off the new espionage menu and just talk about it briefly. You won't be using it as much because everything will have such a high difficulty until you unlock better encryption, but it was worth just kind of going over really quick on a high level. The next subject I want to go into is planetary management, just to kind of quickly go over this. So here's our planet menu for our empire capital, and as you grow out your other colonies, these colonies will start to become agro worlds or bureaucratic centers, whatever it is. And those will be assigned by simply producing more districts there, so you don't really need to worry about that. There's nothing about the actual planet that becomes that world unless you kind of make it that direction. So let's go over this from top to bottom. We have our type of world that this is and our habitability. Of course, it's 100% because it's our capital world. We talked about that before. We have who the governor is. We have colonial spirit here. Any kind of benefits or boons will be right here. Then we have a pretty important panel. This is what's pretty much going to be the thing you're going to be looking at the most. First off, we get decisions, which will allow you to do specific things to basically give a boost in one direction to basically fine-tune or burst a specific thing. Like, for example, distribute luxury goods, amenities plus 25%, and immigration pull plus 25% for 120 months. So you can use these in a situation where you say need them, like stops all pop growth on the planet, reduces stability while active, or increases stability and adds more soldier jobs. Whatever it is, you can quickly do them through the decisions. I haven't found a good one to use in the very beginning of the game, and if you do know one, please by all means let me know in the comment section, but for beginners, you probably don't even need to worry about it. But next to this is our stability. Now, stability is pretty important because it changes depending on whether or not it's above 50%. If it is above 50%, you get this: effects from high stability, resources from jobs, trade value, and immigration pull are increased. That value is pretty much 0.6% trade, 0.6% jobs, and 0.4% immigration pull for every point over 50. If that drops below 50, you lose 1% trade, 1% job production, and +2 to immigration push, meaning people are going to leave the planet. So keeping your stability above 50 is key. That's what gets you that effects from high stability. This is your population, obviously the total amount of population on the planet. Then you have a number of other things. So crime in the early portions is not crazy. You probably won't run into this very much, but if you do, there's a chance that certain things will spawn on your planet, like a crime syndicate, stuff that is maybe permanent and won't ever leave. Or you might just have random events that happen for a certain set number of months. This will pretty much be based off of stability and overall happiness and any enforcers that you might have on the planet. Right now it's 0, we don't need to worry about it. Housing obviously is the number of houses that you have across your districts and from your buildings, and you'll see this number go up and down depending on the population right now. So you can see here effects from free housing, immigration pulls 2%. So since we've got houses, our planet is it looks appealing to people to immigrate to. Now, if there is less, they will, or even negative, and it's overcrowded, they will emigrate from it. Now, there's also the amenities, which is basically just things that help out with general happiness. So as you can see from high amenities, citizen pop happiness plus 8%. Amenities are increased by buildings or other little factors that will give entertainment from specific jobs, such as, I don't think I have any on here. No, but There's not an auditorium, hollow theater right there. That'll give you some amenities. Can also be produced, I believe, too, from not alloy foundries. Luxury residence gives you some amenities too as well to help out. So some benefits from amenities help out with happiness. Now you have current unemployment. You never want this to be anything other than 0. If it is, you need to start making some jobs. And when you look over here, this shows us that there are 3 available jobs. Now, in my other playthrough, you saw a bunch of negative red numbers at the top here, right? Empire Sprawl, all these things. My Empire Sprawl had grown so out of control because I was just making districts. I was just pressing these buttons and just going, oh, cool, let's color them all in. Don't play like that. I have already made the mistake, so you don't have to. Basically, look to see if you have available jobs, either 0 or 1. That means there's time to make another district because you've got room to make more jobs on the planet. If you've got available jobs 3 and you make more districts, that doesn't mean the districts are producing. It just means that they're there. And as a result of that, you're going to increase your Empire Sprawl. You're going to increase your available jobs. You're going to lower your stability. So you don't want to do that. Always look at this number. Just go ahead and here, click this. If this is at 0 or lower, you'll see a little red icon over here that'll say, hey, there's a job issue. You just go over and you check it out and you fix it. You're done. So just make sure 0 or 1, then make a district. And the district should coincide with the districts that you need. And I would say that really your generator districts are a very good early start and focus because you want to be able to get credits, to get leaders, to get scientists to make science ships. Another big focus is probably going to be in your industrial districts to give you alloy to make ships and consumer goods to supply your research stations with jobs. And we'll get to those in a little second here. Mining districts are going to help you out in giving you the materials you need to make buildings, but you'll also get them passively from setting up mining stations, so it's not as important. You'll be using a lot of generators. And then the agriculture district will allow you to create food. Not as huge because, like I've said before, food is not the most important of resources. Then lastly, you have city districts here, which you can see clerks produce trade value and amenities. They also help out with trying to mitigate a little bit your Empire Sprawl. But remember, you're building a district too, so it's not a full-on mitigation. But it's important just to kind of have those things in mind. Now, as we move over here, we have this button here called Features. Now, when you look at this, we have a total number of 6 districts that we can make on this planet. These little hash marks through these tell me that 3 of these districts are blocked. When I go to Features, it tells me which ones are blocked and why and how much I can pay to remove the blockage and what it will do. So Sprawling Slums will increase my population. Industrial Wasteland will unblock fertile lands, and it will max agricultural districts +2. And this will increase my agricultural districts +2 as well. Both of these, not so much of a priority in my mind. This one, a priority. This is going to give me more populations, more jobs, so on and so forth. So try to look for breaking apart the blockers for the focus you have on a planet. And I would say make your planets focused on one thing at a time. Generator for the first planet you create isn't a bad idea, nor is industrial district. Just base it off of how many districts are available to you. You don't want to force a planet to be an industrial district or an industrial planet if it only has like 4 slots. But for the most part, these two will be somewhat similar from what I understand. The generator one is typically a little more rare. You'll always find less generator districts than the other two from what I understand. Now, you also have buildings. Now, buildings are essentially your specialized workers. All the districts create general workers, while these guys create the specialized ones for the most part. There are different situations here. Like metallurgists turn minerals into alloys. Administrative offices here are going to help with your administrative capacity. Remember, that is your Empire Sprawl button or number here on the right. Autocathon Monuments will help out with Unity and society research. Civilian industries will help out with consumer goods. Essentially, these things are about taking one resource and converting it into another. Even if it's people, jobs, what have you. Hollow theaters use jobs to create, amenities in Unity, and also takes consumer goods, luxury residences, precinct houses, research labs, resource silos, and strongholds. You'll probably never ever use resource silos, so don't ever worry about them. Unless you know a specific instance in which you would, please let me know in the comments. But research labs are going to be the first building you're going to create on your capital as soon as it is okay to make that. When I say okay, I'm saying you have a good economy going and you can sustain the job of the research labs, because you don't really need to jump into it too fast, but once you do, it's going to really help out with your research. So we're going to click population. Oh, well, you know what? Before we do that, this is the total trade value of this planet itself, and this is the planet's total production. Now, if you see a deficit number here, don't worry. You don't have to neutralize that number and make it a zero-sum total for the planet. It's just telling you that if you're saying, hey, why do I have minus 40 consumer goods? Well, this planet's got a deficit of minus 20. Let me see what I can do to mitigate some of that here. But it's telling you that's where it's going to pull from your empire to use those consumer goods. Don't worry about the deficit here and trying to make all there be zeros at one planet. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have some deficits on some planets. It's okay. But we're going to click population here, and this is what I was talking about with these jobs. So we have the different strata, the different tiers. Rulers at the top, administrators, specialists like metallurgists who are going to be making minerals into alloy. But I've been talking about this quite a bit here. Oops, I didn't mean to press that button. Press this button. Just you click on this thing itself, or you can hover over any one of these if you so wish. But if we go down to researchers, we're seeing that 4 consumer goods are being used, 2 consumer goods each for each one of these guys, to produce 10 total physics, society, and engineering research. So that's what I was saying. You're going to be using those consumer goods to use on your researchers to increase your research as a whole. But just to kind of rehash that there. Then we have all of our workers. These are the guys that are clerks, technicians, miners, and farmers. And you can click to say, hey, I want all of these guys to go over there instead. But we don't need to do that. I would just kind of let this automatically do its thing. Then you get the split of your entire faction. Is it all human? Are there AI on the planet? Is there other races on the planet? Do you have AI assembling? Do you have a certain race declining while another one is growing because of emigration and immigration? So not as huge, I would say. If you are just starting the game, I wouldn't really worry about it. Armies that you have stationed on the planet, again, not so huge in the beginning portions of the game, and I wouldn't worry too much about it. You're really only going to be dealing with this when you get into really big conflicts with other nations. And you have corporate. If you are a megacorp, you can establish branch offices and the such. But that is a quick rundown of the planetary management. Now let's go into how to kind of get the initial portions of the game started. Okay, it is time to take everything that we've learned and put it together for the beginning of our campaign. Now, I'm going to talk about some things that I've already discussed previously, but just to put them all here so they're in one nice, neat category helps out when you're starting out. Now, this is some things that you should do before you even unpause the game. And having the little tutorial bot around is actually quite a bit of help if you don't really understand things. He'll at least kind of refresh you on them as you jump through stuff. So, let's jump into our home system. And we have got everything that we need, right? We've got a number of mining stations, some research stations. We have got 1 construction ship, 1 science ship, our little fleet, and our shipyard. And then also our capital, which is right here. So what we're going to first talk about are traditions. And that is gathered through the Unity. We've talked about this before, but the first ones that you should really be focusing on are both expansion and discovery. You can min-max this by going into one, then the other, then finishing the other off, and finishing the other off. or you can just go down one to begin with. And there's really no wrong answer here. Personally, I think that these two in Discovery are so strong. So to boldly go is going to increase the survey speed of your science ship, and that is significant, by 35% no less. So they'll be able to survey more planets and discover more and more and more of the galaxy around you. Why that is so important is in the beginning portions of the game, you want to find out where other empires are. It gives you an idea of where you can expand, and if those empires are hostile, how to expand your capital planet and where to build star bases. You don't want to just build star bases all willy-nilly like I was saying earlier. You want to have a focus point. So to boldly go is such a really good, strong one. And then after that, just finish this portion of the tree off and then get this one last. Because Science Division gives you additional research alternatives. And why this is important is we talked about this before with research, but every single branch, physics, society, and the other one that I can't think off the top of my head, engineering, has got three technologies you can research. This adds a fourth one into the mix, and that is quite nice. So you'll have that right out the gate. And like I said before, getting your technology up as fast as possible is really important. You don't want to get caught in the dust with that, or else every faction around you is just going to be that much stronger. So those are your traditions. You won't encounter them for probably about your first hour or two until you really get enough unity, but then you'll just dive into these, and each one is going to cost you more and more. And then eventually you're going to unlock your Ascension perk. And we'll go over that when we jump forward. What we're going to do right now is talk about the beginning portion, then I'm going to jump forward to show you off a little bit of how this is going to come to fruition. But we'll talk about Ascension perks once we finish this section. But then after that, it's really nice to go down expansion. This is going to reduce your starbase influence cost. Just this one to start off with, and then colonize fervor makes it so new colonies start with one additional population. Getting your first colony out as soon as possible is going to be huge because that's going to help boost your economy. And you're going to only be able to find that colony by searching the stars for a potential planet. We might have one here. We're going to find out. So those are traditions, and that is probably the quick and down and dirty of how you should focus. Go to Discovery first, followed by expansion. Now, here's a kind of a cheesy thing you can do, but you start off with these ships, and they're usually fitted out by the AI. You get 3 ships, they're all set up. Now you can do this if you want. It's kind of cheesy, but turn off auto-generate designs, clear the design, and then save it. And then if we go over here to our military fleets, click it, and then you see this button right here, we can upgrade them, and it's going to give us 132 alloy. See how it said minus 132 alloy? So that's going to just give us a quick little alloy boost. That's kind of a cheesy way to do things. You're just going to add it back on later, but it's a nice way to get some money in the early game. Now, in addition to that, we've got another thing we have to take care of. So let's take a look at research. So right now, we have our scientists in their roles. And we've talked about this before, but just to rehash it, you want each one of these researches to be kind of focusing on something in specific. So with physics, the very first one you should definitely be doing is this one. Get that 20% bonus to your research. It's going to help you out a lot. Now, Lorenza here, let's have her do the same thing here, 20%. On this one, we have the 20%. You saw earlier in the video, we had Unity. That's a good one too, or population growth if neither this or Unity are available. I would probably go with this to start off with because it's just so much better to get that early bonus so you can tech up quickly. See, right now we're only getting 2% research progress. This is going to help us out significantly. Then our last one here is engineering. Now, in this case, I actually don't have very many great options, but we're going to go with 0G refineries to get Nebula refineries. These things will be strong in the mid to, well, not even mid, but later early and mid game, and it'll be very helpful. So we can go ahead and choose that one. Now, remember what I said here, engineering, we want to try to get someone with Voidcraft so we can start to get some of the cooler engineering researches. So let's take a look at our leaders. And we've got this guy. He's our other one that we don't have doing any research, and he is going to give us archaeology excavation speed. That'll be nice when he is out exploring, not going to be so great when he's inside researching. And the madman, or the maniacal here, can actually be better put. From what I understand, you want that one to go into, maniacal should go here. So we're going to swap her with him. Go back to this and put her there. So it doesn't do a whole ton because she obviously has green and you want someone with blue in this section, but putting this guy here, from what I've heard with society in specific, is quite good because it unlocks some cool ascension perks. Now for physics here, we don't have any blue perks to put into this section, so that's okay. Now let's go ahead and click recruit. Now we do have an option for a expertise in computing, and I actually like to have computing in that research field. I think it's a pretty good one. But you'll see right here that we are barred by not having enough credits. We've got 200, the cost is 200, and this one up here we only have got 100. So here's some kind of tricky little ways you can get around that. So we're gonna go to market, F3, and we're gonna sell all of our food. And I know you're probably thinking, what do you mean? I sold all my food, now my people can't eat. Well, you're still producing 12 food, so you're fine. Don't worry about it. This is already after consumption. When you hover over it, you can see we've produced 40, 20 is consumed, residual 12 is going basically into our quote-unquote stock. So you're fine, don't worry about it. But this gives us 200 credits to buy a second leader. So we'll go to leaders, go to recruit, and we're gonna recruit this Frank Knox here. And we're going to go back to technology and swap her out with him. Back again to technology one more time, and you can see that this research progress went up because he is contributing to it with his computing specialty. So what I just to kind of rehash one more time with technology, try to get computing in physics and try to get voidcraft in engineering, and anything else you can for society, go for it. Anything green will really help you out. What I've heard though, maniacal is a really good one. So these are all set, but now we still have our science ship. So this science ship is all set with this guy in control, and that's good. So let's go ahead and press M to go to our map. And we can see we have quite a bit around us. And this can be tedious. You can just right click and press survey, and he's gonna take his time, and then you're gonna have to do it again and again and again and again. Well, you can hold down Shift and queue up a whole ton of these commands, so that this way he can just go about his business, and then once you see this icon turn to a series of little Z's, like he's sleeping or he's just in orbit, like this one says he's in orbit, then you know, okay, well, he's ready for some more surveying. And if you hover over this icon too, you'll see the progress of each individual aspect of a system and how long it's taking him to survey it, or where he's at in the surveillance. So if he's surveying the system here of Savomia, Sawima, then I can see by hovering over it where he is in the progress of the overall system, and this bar will fill up as he does the individual aspects of these systems. So that's a great little point to do with your survey ship. It's going to go out and do its business. Now, with your construction ship, remember we talked about these little numbers and how they are currently in white rather than green? Well, we want to build all of our mining and research stations. So you can right click here and I can press this button, and it's going to build both of the mining stations. Then I can build this button and it'll build both of, or the one research station. But if I jump down here, click my construction ship, and we kind of look around, where is it? Okay, so here's our research station, or the one that we need to build. And where is our other one? There is our other mining station. Now, you have a choice to make. You can either prioritize the minerals, which will allow you to make more stations, or the credits, which will allow you to kind of function, I guess, a little bit better according to other things. Your upkeep won't be as taxed because you're spending more time getting credits rather than minerals. So my take is go ahead and build our mining station here on the energy credits. It'll give us some credits to start off. We just depleted some of them. We're getting minerals at a rate of 26 right now, so this will recover quickly enough that we can get the next station out fast. So those are some initial things that you should be doing right out the gate. Once we've done all that, the game is pretty much a matter of rinse and repeat. You're going to go ahead and keep exploring these systems, and you're going to build outposts on those systems with the construction ship. I'm going to go ahead and unpause while I talk about the capital.
New sitrep.
And in this capital here, we have got some things to talk about. Now, we talked about how you don't want to have a whole bunch of available jobs sunk into this, and you want to make sure that you're kind of going at the pace that your economy is growing, right? You don't want to just build districts because you can build districts because you think it's going to help. It's not. I promise you, you're going to hamstring yourself. But when it gets to a point where you've started to expand and you've gotten to a good level of income coming in across both your minerals, your energy, your consumer goods, and your alloy, it's time to decide what kind of building to build. Now, this will be dependent upon one of two things. It'll be dependent upon one thing. What are the people around you? Are they hostile empires? Well, you're probably going to need a bunch of ships, so it's time to make an alloy foundation. This will increase the output of alloy so you can upgrade your ships, but most importantly, so you can make star bases and upgrade the modules on star bases. Making an outpost does cost influence and alloy, but making the star base is really going to be able to help out in the early game because it can deal with a fleet in the earliest portions of the game on its own. Now, let's say you have a non-hostile empire next to you. Well, time to rush that tech.
Anomaly found.
I know. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. We'll actually pause right here. Go with research labs, because that means you're going to be able to tech up faster. You're going to get more out of your research stations in this system. And I just strongly recommend it so that you get to the techs that you need so that you can actually be competitive in the galactic sphere of stuff, whatever that word I'm trying to look for. Now, every so often you're going to get these anomalies, and I've said this before. Take a look at the difficulty and the time. This isn't that hard. It's only anomaly level 2. At this point, I would probably research it just to get it out of the way. But in the earliest portions of the game, just leave it for now. Even if it's anomaly level 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, just leave it. You can come back and do these at any point. It's not going to hurt you. Sometimes they'll give you a little boon, and that's nice. But I would not necessarily focus on doing anomalies until my empire has grown to the point where I am butting up against the borders of other empires. Then I can go inward and start to deal with these anomalies because my science ships won't have anywhere to go. I'll have explored all the world that I can explore, all the worlds that I can explore, and my science ships are just kind of chilling. So, well, time to start looking at anomalies. So leave B for now. Unpausing to talk about this construction ship. Like I said, it's now snoozing, and we have enough minerals to make another station here. So we're going to right click, and at this point I'm going to have it we're going to do another mining station so we can get more minerals to make the research station. Again, prioritizing one over the other depends also on the system. Like if you're in one system here, we'll wait for this I'm actually going to fast forward this to the fastest speed. As this starts to look at more of these systems, you're going to be able to figure out what you should prioritize in those stations. Now, one thing I forgot to say, we made that extra scientist. I'm stupid. I totally forgot to talk about this. Go to your shipyard and build another science ship. That was the whole point of getting this additional scientist. So I totally messed up in telling you that. I apologize, but go ahead and do that. We're going to fast forward that while it does it. And this will allow us to expand in multiple directions. And the point of doing this, like I said, is figuring out what is around us, finding out where we should jump to next with our construction ship. We have a science ship, assign a leader. We're looking for the one that says available. Here we go.
Construction complete.
I'm going to pause real quick just to show this off one more time. Hold down Shift, right click, survey, survey. And we're going to jump forward a little bit here to kind of show you how this all pans out. But I want this to finish surveying this location. We're going to fastest yet again. Our construction's complete, so we can actually make another station over here with our construction ship. That guy is just hauling down there. And this dude, so let's take a look at how this is going.
Recon pass completed.
Cool, we're all done there, and he's going to move to the next location. You can see progress is moving. He's down over there. And now he is looking at Chort. So when our construction ship finishes up here, we're going to talk about...
Construction complete.
Pull this down. We're going to talk about outposts. So click our construction ship, right-click here, and build a outpost or starbase. Now, ideally, I'm not going to lie to you, I should have gone here first, Yump, because it has a planet, and there's a chance that and we would have been able to potentially inhabit this planet. So I should have done that. Here, actually, we're going to go there right now. But for the sake of this video, we'll just go ahead and build this starbase to talk a little bit about how this works. So, speeding up one more time, the construction ship should start to head there. It'll slowly take its time. We might even get lucky and... So it looks like we have had a first contact. I didn't even see it happen. Oh, this is our policy for first contact. So we'll say we'll be cautious. You might not get that dilemma. And I'll be honest too, putting an outpost on a single location like this is not overly worth it, because it is in the long run, but I'm saying I shouldn't have not have prioritized this location because it just has one single station
Anomaly
here.
Found.
We'll leave that for now. And I guess this is a good thing to show you guys, like, right? Like,
Construction
don't
complete.
just jump to the first location and build a starbase immediately. Like, it's not going to help you in the long run. As you can see here, I just wasted influence and alloy to just make a single credit station. So hopefully this next one that we discover down here is more worth it to talk a little bit about that. So this is going to go a little bit further, and we have our first tradition. So let's go ahead and go to Discovery. Then we're going to go to Adopt. You have to adopt the tree first, and then you can start to go into the tree. Moving forward here a little bit more again. And just waiting for science ships over here. How much longer? So we have quite a bit of things over here in Yump. So that will take some time.
Construction complete.
So now that that's done, we can see there's another planet over here, and let's say, you know, hey, this is way more worth it than this location. I'm just going to go over here and build a starbase. Well, if I were to do that, I don't think this will show because we haven't revealed it. Yeah, we can't. But every outpost needs to have an adjoining border to be built. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that it won't be built. I'm saying that it will exponentially go up in cost for every system jump it is away from your borders. So this is 60 influence and 90 alloy. If I wanted to do this one rather than this one, and since it's a one jump away, I believe it doubles in cost. It goes up significantly. So do not jump over your own systems. The AI might do it to you, but don't do it to yourself, because the influence cost is alone is just not worth the headache. So we're almost done here on Yump. And by almost, I mean not very close. We're going to move our construction ship over this direction. Let's take a look at our capital right now. And we're getting close here to moving into making a possible another job with our research labs. And our technology should be starting to get ready to... about 1/4 of the way there. And I kept that mistake in there because I want it to be really apparent that, you know...
Anomaly found.
Okay, gain a level, good. And, you know, this one actually, I would do. It's such a small amount of time, we could just knock it out. I wanted to keep that mistake in there to show you guys like how easy it is to just simply go, okay, build an outpost, build an outpost, build an outpost. And how that really isn't the right, necessarily best way to go about this. And as we can already see that this planet right here is habitable. Okay, good, yes, good. We got a cool resource right there. And I find that I always like accidentally pause and just kind of hang out there. So we're almost done here, which is good. We can talk a little bit about colonies now.
Anomaly found.
Leave it be for sure, that's challenging. And
Recon
done.
task completed.
So when we take a look at what we've got here around us, we can see some pretty interesting star systems. And these are important to take note of. So you can see that all these systems are interconnected with their hyperlanes. Well, Yump here is in a really good position because it is a choke point. In order to get into the rest of my empire, you need to go through this. Same thing over here. In order to get into the rest of my empire, you need to go through this. Prioritizing these choke points is huge because once you do it, your entire empire can be insulated from the inside out after that. Because, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to build myself a starbase here, and if this is where a hostile empire is, then this location is going to get an actual starport, and I'm going to really build it up, and it's going to be a bastion of defense. But if there's nothing over here, or it's a non-hostile empire, then I don't need to waste money on it. So making sure that you expand and check out the empires around you as fast as possible is going to dictate the speed at which you're going to grow and the buildings you're going to make in certain locations. Don't just think build outpost, upgrade, build outpost, upgrade. Just fill any city with districts and districts and districts. Like I said, go slow, make sure your economy can hold it. I've been going at such a fast pace right now that I'm sure I could have built a ton of things, and I just haven't done it right now because I'm a little focused on trying to teach the lesson of construction ships. So this guy is making his the starbase here, and then we will talk a little bit about colonies before jumping ahead.
New sit rep.
Okay, going just a little bit further forward. And this system in and of itself is kind of like lackluster, right? We only get one little mining station here, but it is still just kind of part of what we have to do. So let's go ahead and click the construction ship and just have him. Yeah, we've got plenty of resources. So let's click on this location, and this has a 70% habitability. It's good enough. Let's go ahead and colonize, because like I said, you want to colonize as fast as possible. Now, I think we're actually really close to a... This will happen in 352. That's in 2 months. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and do this. So you can click on this location and press colonize. Then this will create the ship and send the colony ship there to do. If you go through the shipyard and build your colony ship, you have to manually do it. So this is just a kind of a way to save you some time. Click this green planet, press colonize, click here. There you go. You get to name the planet or the colony and unpause. And you can see that it will start to do it on its own. You don't have to do anything. It's going to make the ship as it's doing. And that ship will come down here.
System reconnaissance completed.
Leave B for now. And we'll start to do its own thing. So we're going to go ahead and traditions. We're going to choose to boldly go. Now, this brings up the last portion of what I want to talk about before we jump ahead. And that is edicts. So we've done a lot so far, right? In the small amount of time, we've jumped to 2 different systems. We've increased our empire by 2 systems, because that's how that works. And we've already discovered a 3rd habitable planet, which is actually even more habitable than Yump. And to be totally honest, it was a better system overall too. Look at better physics research, we got minerals, and we get exotic gases. So definitely look at all the planets around before you jump right into colonizing the first one you see, but do get that colony ship out quickly. So since we chose to adopt, here we go. Since we chose to adopt discovery, you can hover over it and it says adoption effects, unlocks edict, map the stars, anomaly research speed increased by 20%. So let's go over here and go to edicts. And we can see that we have an edict called Map the Stars. This edict pushes for further galactic exploration to bring light to the darkness and find what wonders lie beyond. And this one is huge because it increases our survey speed by an additional 25%, anomaly discovery chance plus 10%, and then ship hyperlane detection range is plus 1. So you can see right now, this is what we can see at this portion of the map. Now, we don't quite have enough influence to do this, and that's mainly because we made this second outpost on accident. But when you get to this point, you want to choose Map the Stars quickly, because this is going to greatly increase the speed at which you can survey, and that will allow you to just push further and further. So leave B for now. We'll research that one. But take a look here at this science ship. Like I was saying, look to see if you have anything that's idle, click it, and set up a bunch of surveys. You can unlock a technology where things will automatically survey for you, but really you're kind of fine doing this. And what I've accidentally done was kind of make it so I'm gonna have to move back on myself because I want this guy to go out this direction, but we'll go ahead and deal with this in time and move over here, then back over here, and then up here. So this guy is pretty much set for the foreseeable future with plenty of things to do. And same thing with this guy. We'll go here, then we'll go here, then we'll go out here, then here. And that map the stars edict is going to make that time stack up with the other tradition we just got a little bit ago here. That 35% will stack with that 25%, putting it at a 60% survey speed increase. Not to mention any technologies that you so happen to choose that would increase that as well. But this gives you an idea of how to start the beginning portions of the game. I know this was kind of fast and we did mess up in places, and I wanted to show you exactly how those mess ups can affect and slow down your game, because now we can't do this map the stars edict for quite a bit of time. We have to wait until our influence gets to 200. So you can see that a slight little misstep like that can actually set you back, but this hopefully shows you that just take your time, pace it out. I had it on fastest, so it was easy for me to make a lot of mistakes. Let me jump ahead and show you how this can all kind of come together in one of my other campaigns. Jumping back to this campaign, we can kind of see what I've done with some of these choke points and how I've been able to use them. So over here at Voom, we've set up an actual star hold, and at Gertab as well. I think I'd actually just decided to move it over here at one point. But Voom is a real big choke point here that you should be focusing on. And it's the same thing down here at Zom. I saw that this was another human faction, and at first they looked like they were going to be hostile towards me and ended up actually becoming firm friends. So this location I can actually dismantle and have it repurposed to not being a star hold. Whereas Voom here, it's not the worst to keep this location because again, it's at that choke point into the rest of my empire. The same thing down here at Zom, because this person is hostile to me. So is this one down here. So this allows me to keep my fleet. Where's my trusty fleet? Oh, my fleet's all the way back here at Sol. So my fleet's over up here. I can bring my entire fleet to this location. And if I look at Zom, I can see it's got 1.1k actual military power. And that's quite strong. So you can see this as kind of an added firepower on top of my fleet's 668. And another thing I wanted to talk about is these ancient drones. Now these have a 907. That's actually a pretty substantial fleet that not even my own fleet can actually combat against. It's got destroyers in here, combat drones, mining drones. So you can look at this as its own sort of bottleneck or its own sort of choke point. I could kill this and then make a base here, or I know that this hostile fleet will essentially protect me from anything coming from this direction. Now, of course, this is kind of against the edge of the map, so it's not that worrisome. And same thing up here, it's not as worrisome, but I can already see that the UNS, United Nations of Earth, have already started to kind of look over in this direction. So I can build, if I want, another star hold here to hold this choke point, or expand out and find another choke point up here. Working around these choke points is going to be huge to the growth of your empire because it allows you to create a picket line that you can then fill in from that line backwards into your empire. And if you don't do it quickly though, you have to kind of be wary because sometimes the AI can jump you and make a little hole in your empire. It can happen. It's not happened to me in the 4 or 5 playthroughs I've done to test a lot of this stuff, but it can happen to you. So be wary of it if you are butted up against a very expansionist AI that just goes to gobble stars up quickly. Just be wary of it. But hopefully this now gives you a better idea of how to start off in the initial portions of Stellaris, and you have these kind of first stepping stones in place, and you can put all this together to help you get your feet wet in a Stellaris Nemesis. Then lastly, before jumping into DLC, is discussing Interstellar Dominion, the Ascension perk that I recommend. Now this does a pretty significant bonus to you. It reduces your Starbase influence cost by 20% and claim influence cost by 20%. You can choose other Ascension perks by all means, but this one is a really good early one as you're getting your feet wet in the game. Starbases become a lot less of a barrier against your economy by having a 20% Starbase influence cost reduction. Now the last subject I want to cover is downloadable content for Stellaris, and this can be a really overwhelming portion of breaking into Stellaris. So let's just kind of go through this and break things down. So for one, you have all the DLC that is broken up into these separate categories. You've got expansions, content, species packs, and then story packs. And it can be kind of hard to determine which ones to get. And I'm just going to be honest with you, the expansions are all probably the best ones to get because they add a lot to the game. There's a higher bang for your buck. If you had to choose one, you probably just not as worth it. Megacorp is a little bland, not a whole ton going for it. Utopia, Apocalypse, Federations, and the brand new Nemesis are really, really enjoyable, and they just add so much to the game. Now, as far as the content packs go, really, all these are up to you. They're purely, not prosthetic, they're purely cosmetic. So you really don't need to jump into any of these if you don't want to. I think these are actually linked to the special version of the game I have. I think that might be the Galaxy Edition. These species packs include some new species. Now, I will say the lithoids and the necroid packs actually include more than just simply cosmetic additions to the game. They have unique mechanics attached to both the lithoids and necroids. So they are worth it if you are interested in those races, but you're not going to miss anything by playing through the game without them. Versus, say, the expansion packs, they're going to add a lot to the campaign as a whole, and the story packs will as well. And I honestly find that Leviathans and Synthetic Dawn, as well as Ancient Relics, add a lot to the game. Leviathans are going to be adding in these individual ancient creatures for you to fight or individual trading outposts. Synthetic Dawn and Ancient Relics also add a lot as far as little tiny forays with your situation log to just make the world feel, or the galaxy feel, more alive. Distant Stars you could skip out on if you so wish, but I know this might not be the most helpful of guides here, but I really do truly feel that all the expansions add so much to the game, and it's really hard to skip out on them. The species packs are purely cosmetic for the exception of lithoids and necroids, which add specific mechanics to them. And then the story packs really make the game come alive. If I had to choose two of these four, it would be Leviathans and probably Synthetic Dawn. And you can find a link to my Nexus store in the description and the pinned comment, like I've said before, where all of this is 50 to 75% off up until March 19th. So if there's any you're missing, go ahead and use my Nexus store. You'll get a Steam key where you can then redeem and pick up any DLC you are missing for Stellaris. And at that, it brings our video to a close. Now, I know we've covered a lot of different subjects. It's really dense, and you might have actually gotten lost along the way and probably replayed portions of this video. And for all intents and purposes, some of this information might become outdated on the next patch. So don't feel bad about being frustrated with Stellaris. Any Paradox game is going to have a high barrier of entry, whether it's Hearts of Iron, Crusader Kings, Stellaris, Europa, anything out there. So don't get frustrated with yourself. Just keep going at it. Save a whole bunch and try new decisions. Try different ways of approaching your campaign. I promise that's the way that I learned. And if you just learn to break the game by going through those little tiny dilemmas where you go, okay, well, what does this do? I'm going to save right here. I'm going to try this one. I'm going to see what it does. And maybe you play the game for 30 or 40 years and go, well, what did that other one do? And you jump back to that old save, and then you go through the other dilemma branch. So don't be afraid for your first playthrough to just go through as many holes as you can. Wormholes, black holes, all the holes. And you'll really find yourself discovering more about the game. Go slow, read the tooltips, look at all these little nuance, because although there is a ton of information and it really can be a senses overload, it's really just about slamming your face against it and failing a whole bunch until you get to where you want to get. That's like that's like a life lesson more than just a game lesson. But hopefully this helped break down some of the barrier of entry for you for Stellaris. And if you have any questions, please by all means, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'll do my best to help you out. And if you are a veteran of Stellaris and I maybe got something wrong or there wasn't 100% right, please, by all means, correct me in the comments. Getting as much information out as possible makes it easier for people to jump into games like this, because it does have that barrier of entry, but once you break it down, it is such an enjoyable and beautiful game to really get into. So again, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun action, but have a good one and take care.